at you, Andy.
All right. Well, I'll do my best to not to pick my nose or anything weird.
Right, exactly. Okay. that was at the the I played there. What
The Soapbox Gallery in Brooklyn.
gallery?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a cool place. The Jimmy Greenfield's place. It's an actual gallery. He's an amazing artist
he is.
and very cool guy. Yeah, just um I want to go back in there. I got to reach out to him. He's like a real artist, and
Yeah,
he started
yeah,
that whole thing during COVID. It's really
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It's a very cool room.
Is it
Yeah.
still going on? Is he still doing stuff in there?
I
I think.
believe so because I'm pretty sure I get emails from him.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I know he had to skip. He during COVID, everybody, because of the way this place was structured, and a few people come in, and it was mainly that kind of thing. Was a streaming thing. He was just so busy. He just so he had to take a step back from it so he could do his art and all this other stuff. But
yeah,
he's really great. It's a
yeah.
cool
He's a great
situation.
artist. Those
Yeah,
sculptings of the people.
unbelievable, right? Yeah, they're wild. Isn't that wild? You go into that other room.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, it's trippy.
Really feel like you're there with them, and it's
They
like
are
right.
beings.
It's like prison. Some of them are like prisoners, or right.
Yeah, there's some sort of torment involved, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
something, but they're definitely you can't walk into the room, which is like the backstage
yeah.
without going, oh my God, what's going on? It's
I
really
know
cool.
they really they really have a presence to them.
I made a record and the cover was done. I hired the place out and with Sandrine Lee, Willie's wife, but she's an amazing photographer. And she does these things called ghosts where you literally the aperture speed, the shutter speed or something is so slow in the camera that you run out and it creates this like ghost like effect, like half of your fingers are there and then they're gone.
Oh
And you
wow.
literally like you're sitting there and then she counts to five and on five you just run as fast as you can out of the shot. It's wild. But so we did it that at his studio because it just had the right lighting and everything. So and I
Oh.
remember this on my there's he covered up one of his structures, one of his sculptures, but it's sort of in the background in this weird, looks like a, you don't know what it is. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
Is that a record that we can look at the cover?
Yeah. Yeah. That record came out, well, was it last year? It's a record and it's called I Was Here. And it's,
Let's see.
yeah. And I did it at the sort of the end of COVID. I just I was writing so much music that I said I got to put this thing out and so yeah and so that shot is from that's Jimmy's place,
Let me
that
get a
picture.
bigger
Yeah,
look.
yeah, yeah. So you can sort of see how you can
Yeah,
see through me, and then
yeah,
that strange like
yeah.
thing in the background is him covering up and we just left it in. We changed the floor. Sandrine, we did some movie magic and changed the floor, but that's like where that curtain is and everything. That's all real. That's just
Yeah,
she's amazing. So I just wanted something weird and
it's great.
yeah.
So, for those of you listening here, um, how I met Andy was definitely fortuitous because I didn't actually go to see music at that moment. I was in New York at the Jazz Congress, and me and a
Right.
few people had gone for a drink at this kind of open bar
Yeah,
area, and I couldn't help but notice the pianist. And as it turned out, Andy was actually subbing for the pianist.
that's right.
And I happened to stay back. I just didn't feel like going out. So afterwards, so I just hung out and I was like, damn, who is this man? This guy is great. So that's
Thank you.
how that's how we met. Um, it's such a big world with so many players, and
Oh yeah.
even though compared to like here in Europe, we're not that far away, but still New York has so many other musicians that I don't
Oh,
know,
it's
you know.
incredible.
Yeah.
I'm always learning a new people and brilliant like young musicians too are coming up. They're just like who is this person? Amazing.
Yeah.
Men, women, they're,
Yeah.
to me, they're children, but no, they're incredible. It's unbelievable.
I don't know if you go through this, but I mean, I'm an opinionated singer. I've been singing since I was born, and I'm opinionated. So when the one of the biggest things I look for in a singer in any genre is kind of an honesty, you know. And so if I hear a singer who has skill and the instrument and honesty, I'm in love with them usually. And
Right.
if that's missing, I'm not in love with them at all. So,
Yeah. Because
but
it's so, yeah.
a lot of the singers coming up, I do love because they're just, you know, that's what they are. You know, like Michael Mayo, for instance, he's just so good and he's so him. You know,
Right.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel we were just talking about this. There's so much, especially the way kids are coming up today, the young musicians, they sort of now with this technology, you have at your fingertips, you have everything.
Yeah,
You just have it all. It's all laid out and it's all like there are these videos that are like deconstruct and CSI everything. So you can really get into how the sausage is made, how it's all done. But at the end of the day, um, it you have to communicate something, and there are certain people, singers especially. I feel that the great ones find a way within either limitations or with all the technique in the world, they find a way to convey something more than that. And that's what I'm interested at this point. When you say opinionated, I think maybe just experience and, knowing, okay, I've seen that before. I know what that is. It's impressive, good for them, but
yeah,
what's the end game on it, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So we
Where,
we would just
where?
talk. Sorry, go ahead.
I was curious where you're from. You
Oh
know,
yeah, I'm from the Boston area. I'm from Newton, Mass.
get
Um,
out of here.
from Newton, Mass. Swear to
Wait
God.
a minute. I'm from Newton.
Get out. Newton is
No.
one of those places that are like it's like this magical thing. Yeah, a lot of people are from Newton. That's so funny. Yeah,
Where in Newton?
Waban, Mass, right by the
Okay.
Wellesley. Yeah, we
I
I
hung
grew
out
up
there
there.
a lot. I'm from Oak Hill Park.
Sure.
You know that? Yeah, so that's where I grew up. And
Isn't Oak Hill Park near sort of like I went to Meadowbrook, which is like the
I
where
did
Newton
too.
South. Yeah, I didn't end up going to Newton South because supposedly they had a better music program and I was getting into stuff. So I took I took a we carpooled to like the bus to get to Newton North, and which is on
Oh,
the other side of the sort of dividing line which
yeah,
divided. So we would have
yeah.
probably gone to high school together or something like that.
Well, I think
Um,
I'm older than you.
I don't know. I
I'm
don't know.
71.
Are you really? You look
Yeah,
amazing.
thank you.
Shoot, really? All
Yeah.
right, you're gonna have to tell me your secret because I
I
don't know.
think
I
you're
hope I
doing
hope
it
I make
already.
it.
It's
I
jazz.
hope is it the music? Well, it kills you, it keeps you young. Is that the idea?
Oh man.
Oh,
Yeah, so I went
that's
to
amazing.
Meadowbrook and Newton South,
Wow.
and then I went to Berkeley.
Right on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a great area. My brother lives in now he moved back to Auburndale, which is like
Okay.
the other
Yeah.
side. And then my mom, who's going to be 93, lives in Needham.
Oh,
She's like
yeah.
a, yeah.
Yeah. So
So
Oak Hill Park is like it's in this little corner, and Needham and
yeah,
Dedham and Newton. That's the corner, you know,
yeah,
right by
yeah,
the
yeah.
Charles River. Yeah.
The Chows. Yeah, my
The
brother's right on
Charles.
it. The Chows. My brother's on the Chows River as well. Yeah, it's a great
Wild
area.
man. Yeah. I had a
Small
feeling you
world,
were from
man.
Boston because did you go to Boston Conservatory?
I went to no, I didn't go to school in Boston. This is strange, but I
Oh,
went when I was a kid, I was studying classical music and I got really into it. My dad played jazz. He played like kind of cocktail piano jazz. He was
oh,
really good. And he only played by ear, basically played by ear. He couldn't really read much music,
yeah.
but he was a shoe manufacturer, but he could just play tunes. and he could pick up a song. He could go to a musical or a gig, and he knew a lot of standards. So I'd be like, how does that Cole Porter tune go, or something like that. But so I learned, and I was studying classical music when I got really into music, and I didn't start till I was 10. And then I
Huh.
went to the Boston University School of Fine Arts during high school. I used to take lessons with this teacher there, and she was amazing.
Huh.
And I was just telling, because I had a pretty decent ear, and my dad was showing me how to play tunes and chords at the same time. Um, Sometimes I remember bringing in playing this Bach piece for my teacher, and she said, "Well, that F sharp's really an F natural. It's not what Bach wrote. It's cool and it works what you did, but it's not the right." So, so then I just kept doing classical music, and I went to Oberlin College for a couple of years in 82 and 83, and I thought, this is what I want to do. And then I got more into improvisation. I realized I didn't have quite the temperament to just play, Chopin, and I don't think I was good enough to just do it full on, but I'm glad I had the training.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, but Newton's especially, Larry Goldings is from Newton.
He is?
Yeah, yeah, he's from Newton. In fact, a friend
Wow,
of
I
mine,
had no idea
isn't
of
that
that.
crazy? A friend
Yeah.
of mine,
Oh, wow.
a
Huh.
friend of mine, what was his Dan? He had a younger brother, and he's like, "Oh, you play piano? You got to hear this kid Larry play." And he always saying, so I was like, "Oh yeah," and and then I've had a few run-ins with him since then, and it's amazing. Yeah,
That's crazy. Wow,
isn't that
I
crazy?
did not know that. Yeah, next time I
Yeah.
see him, I'm gonna have to bring that up.
Oh,
That's really
absolutely.
funny.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's a Newton guy. He's younger than me. He's a couple of years younger than me.
Oh,
But uh, whatchamacallit, I lived
I'm
after I
just
went
turning
to.
on my fan. Go ahead.
Okay,
You can keep talking.
okay. I went to University of Miami for.
Oh, yeah.
I
I
went
saw
down
that.
there. I transferred from Oberlin and studied jazz down at University of Miami in 80, I guess 85, 6, 7 till like 88. And then I moved back home because I'm like, what am I going to do? I just moved home for a little while and then moved into Boston. So I had a gig in town, and I lived across the street from Berkeley. So I lived on Haviland Street, like literally. So I
Yeah.
knew all the Berkeley guys
Oh.
just because they were all just my friends because I just lived there. So that's my connection there. And I'd go in once in a while, but
Yeah.
yeah, just knocking around
So,
with those
and where do
guys.
you live now?
I'm in New York City,
Yeah.
so I'm still here, New York City. Uh, we're on 111th Street, one block north of Central Park, right? I'm
Okay.
sort of close on the west side, but the north entrance of Central
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah.
And my kid goes to college in Brooklyn, and my wife works here, and
It's a life.
yeah, I feel like it's good. It's not the same as it used to be, but it's nice to be here amongst all these great musicians.
I
Yeah,
love how you play. If I lived
thank
near
you.
you, I would be working with you.
Yeah, I love working with singers, and I've had the good fortune of working with some really good ones over the years,
And you
and
play now, or you have played with the New York Voices, right?
yeah, for years I played with them. I met them through their manager at the time. 19 when did it was this 1989,
Oh,
and then I moved to New York in like 91 or something. But I was they had five singers at the time
oh,
when they started, and then two of them left, and then Lauren Kinnan came in, and she took over the helm, and it's been the four of them ever since. But I've done a lot of stuff with them. They're awesome, good
yeah, yeah,
friends, and just best people in the world. And
yeah.
that was my gig. I'd go to first time I ever went to Europe was with them, and it was a blast. They're just good, and they kind of took care of me. They were like big brother and sister. It was really nice because it felt they're like that. They're still together. They're like a family. So that
Yeah,
was a good experience.
yeah, yeah,
It taught me a lot.
yeah. That's
I've,
great.
I don't get to see them as much. I sometimes do some stuff with Darman. I'm going to do a gig with Lauren, some like their solo stuff, but um, they're just good people, you know. How many people
They
can you
are.
say that about? Not
Yeah,
enough.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are good. I
And they're amazing. That
think I bumped
blend.
into them. Good chance you were with them. I bumped into them in Japan a few years back.
Possible. Yeah, we used to go there a
Uh,
bunch. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Japan.
Um,
And the woman we saw at that bar, the center bar where I was playing, she's a very good friend of Kim Nazarian, Louise
oh,
Rogers.
oh, okay.
That the woman and her husband, yeah, Louise. So
Yeah.
I used to do gigs with Louise in Boston
Oh,
a million years ago. Yeah. So
yeah.
she's a good singer. So yeah, it's a small world in a way.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and when I think about you and Larry, how you play, that makes sense that there's the Boston influence in there because Boston, I think, has this kind of a particular groove, you know, that
Yeah.
it just grew up with, you know. I mean, when I was in college, it was coming out of the beginning of Motown, you know, out of Woodstock, and ECM actually was just coming out.
Yes.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears was kind of the new jazz. And
Yeah.
then, you know, and then, of course, what turned me on was Weather Report and Bob
Oh,
Moses. And, you
the
know,
best.
then it
Yeah.
had great blues. It had John Mayall and, you know, it was a really rich time. And Boston was a real good melting pot of all that
Gary
stuff.
Burton.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
right.
mean,
He
that
was at
was,
Berkeley at that point.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was Mick Goodrick.
Nick
There were those
Goodrick. Yeah.
NEC guys. I mean, I remember, yeah, and a lot of those guys that sort of came from that ECM, a lot of those European guys were at school at Berkeley during the time that I was just living around there.
Oh
So
yeah.
there was that influence. And when I went to University of Miami, I was in this ensemble that was a big thing, this sort of European ECM. And that's when Keith Jarrett had his, Norwegian quartet and all that stuff. And so I would say that was a great influence. And then coming to Boston, there were some really great musicians from like Austria and Germany that really influenced the whole thing too. And there was a club that I played at with a guy who was from like South Philly, played all like he's a alto player, Herman Johnson, and this guy played every Friday and Saturday for years at this club called Riles in Inman
Yeah.
Square.
Sure.
And
Riles.
that was my little gig. I'd play
Yeah.
every Friday and Saturday with
Wow.
him, and it was great. And he would just play for like hours on end, and he he'd be playing like Mr. Magic, Grover Washington, all that Philly stuff, and all that kind of groove stuff, and all that. And he played a lot of R&B tunes, and he was a bit of a showman. So he would walk the bar and walk around the club. It was great, but it was a good learning experience. And all the bands came. There was the 1369 Club
Yeah.
across the way at the time,
Yeah.
and upstairs. And so you'd see Bob Moses and you'd see those guys, and
Yeah.
Matheny would sit in once in a while, and it was a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great musicians.
Yeah. It was a classic time. It really was.
Yeah,
I'm happy that that was part of my history.
absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of music there.
Yeah. Hi, Taylor. My friend Taylor Hatch. He's a guitarist. He
Yeah.
graduated from North Texas, and
Oh, right on.
yeah, he's a good musician, and he's got a good mind for good questions. So I'll probably be asking you some of his questions.
I hope I can answer them. I don't know. Uh,
Probably.
um, were you in New York at any time?
No, my road was kind of interesting for me anyway. But so when I was 21, I moved to San Francisco. I actually wanted to get away from my mother because my mother was very manipulative. Like she didn't want me to be like my father, and I was, musician, and I was an artist, and but she thought
She was
that was
probably
like,
nervous, like my parents were super nervous. Like I remember my uncle when I was a kid, how are you going to make a living doing all this stuff? And
oh yeah,
I'm still wondering how that's going to happen. But besides that, he my big joke is when parents say, "Oh, my kid," say they're a bass player, my kid plays bass and he's amazing and he wants to do what I'm doing. I said, "Yeah, did you try to talk him out of it?" No. I mean, it's a tough go, but I think people, it's an amazing thing, but you have to, you can tell the people that are going to just do it because
yeah,
they're so passionate about it.
yeah. I have friends who both are like one couple. They're both musicians. They always just been musicians, and they raised two kids. They owned a house. They ended up with like a real nice life, and it
It's
can be
wonderful.
done.
Yeah.
I remember, although one couple was really funny. I could never understand how they qualified for a loan. She was a professional clown, and he a
Uh-oh.
so I always thought, how did the bank actually look at that and okay their loan? Just
There's a
crazy.
guy, there's a guy who's oh,
Right. Well,
are we glitching? Oh, here we are.
yeah,
There you
we
are.
glitched a little. Did you hear
It's
my
a
funny story?
I did hear your story. It's funny you mentioned that. I worked with and I'm good friends with Christopher Cross, who lived in
Oh,
LA for years, and he's back. I think he's back in Austin, and he has a little place here in New York. But Christopher's drummer was a guy named Dave Beyer. I think it's Beyer, and his father was a that was his gig. He was a professional comedian. No, sorry, he was a clown. He was a professional clown, and he showed me a picture of the guy. It was like a legitimate, that was his gig.
yeah.
And he would do gigs and they'd have like a trailer with all his stuff. And that was what he did. It was amazing. I'm like, your dad, and we would always ask him questions like, your dad was a clown? That's so deep. And he said, yeah, he took it very seriously. And he showed me like, promo shots he had a name. It was the best. I have to look it up, but yeah.
My girlfriend, she's a tall woman, and so one gig she had was at a party, a day party. She was dressed up as a mermaid, and she was lying on the chaise lounge drinking, and kind of being a wise ass, when people would come by, yeah, what are you looking at, that kind of thing. She also,
A wise ass mermaid. I love it.
yeah, and she also was at a morning uh, corporate meeting. So if you went over to the table, the breakfast table, you lifted up and her head was there, and she's, "Good morning," you know.
Scaring the hell out of people. That's awesome. It's a gig. When sometimes I've stayed at, is that they still have the Standard on was it not
Yeah,
Santa Monica?
um,
Um Trying to think of the Sunset Boulevard.
sunset. Yeah,
Sunset. I walked into the Standard Hotel and everybody, all the desk people are dressed in white, and behind them there's a looks like a there's a glass case,
yeah.
and then there's a scantily clad girl in like a t-shirt and panties on her phone, just like lying down texting. And that's her gig, was just to sort of sit there and be half naked in the lying down. And I'm like, and I said, is that person real behind you? Oh yeah, that's their gig.
I saw them. I saw that hotel in a movie the other night, and had the most bizarre rooms and the bizarre entryway. I
Yeah.
guess I haven't been in there.
Well, it had, I remember our sax player, he didn't dig it. They had all these sexual innuendos, like you'd get the card to open the door and it said like, slip it in, and all these like really weird. And then like the mini bar had all sorts of contraceptives, and it was a wild place. It was a
Yeah.
scene, and I remember going down, the pool was a real scene. And but but there was a girl in there just like, lying down. Got to go to
So,
work and get on my phone and
wow,
lie down. Yeah. It's a
interesting.
gig. As we say, it's a
Yeah.
gig, right?
So Taylor's asking a few questions.
Sure.
And but he's asking about composing and have you found that your approach to writing has changed over time? But let's talk about
Hmm,
your composing because I don't
okay.
even know about your composing yet.
So I'll tell you, yeah, couple of things. Um, most of I say, I guess, as a side man, most of my career has been like many of us, what is to support another actor or another person or singer or artist and to elevate what they do.
Yeah,
So the playing has uh, uh, um, that's been sort of my gigs, like
yeah,
I work with the singer now, Madeline Peru, and we go on the road and she does her thing and we support her, and that's what most of us do. And then I've always left a little. um the composing has changed based on where I was at the moment. When I was studying classical music, there's a certain classical bent to some of the things that I write, especially certain pianistic things that I write.
yeah,
And I write on the piano mostly. I've moved some things to, like a MIDI situation over the years. And then I guess in the late 90s into 2000s, I worked on a cartoon. So I wrote music for this with this friend of mine. It was to support, this wacky cartoon, which was actually, it was on Cartoon Network, and it was a job that my friend and I had, and we wrote with computers, and we would, be turning water bottles upside down and all sorts of crazy stuff. And it was in the days of CD-ROM. So those were samples and getting into that. And that was just like, this is what the gig needed at the time.
yeah,
So if the times that I've been asked to write or arrange something, that's when I say compose, put together something, it's been for a particular situation mostly. What had happened recently, but all this in the background since I guess if I started when I was 10, I started writing my own, I started coming up with my own, I guess, improvisations that I'd sort of mash together and compose and put them together and try this part here. And when I never thought of myself as a composer for a while. And I would say even recently, but I've always written tunes. So like we talked about ECM music, I was influenced by that kind of music, by Keith Jarrett and those different. So I'd write a tune and somehow it'd have certain chords or certain, and it would be derivative in certain ways of that kind of style. And then I had a swing band in the 90s, like a jump swing band, and we played a lot of Louis Jordan tunes. So I was just trying to write tunes like that with a friend of mine who I just saw, who lives down in Nashville, who's like a rock and roll singer. He sings for Deep Purple, this guy Greg Mangus, and he's great. But he decided he wanted to do this. He wanted to do this sort of Buster Poindexter kind of thing, and that was when that kind of stuff was hot. So I guess the long answer, which I'm giving, is that um, it, it was based on what needed to be done at the time, and I've taken whatever I could from those moments, from those different moments in time. So like, if I'm going to write a tune that's like a Ray Charles tune, or try to, like, how would I do that? And then I guess sort of recently, since COVID, when COVID hit, I just started practicing like crazy. And then I'm
yeah,
like, what am I practicing for? There's no gigs.
yeah,
And so then after that, I said, I just started writing. The music started because I feel like any good writer needs all this space to create stuff. And we had nothing but space.
yeah,
So I just kept writing. And some of those compositions are on that record, I Was Here. But so that's more like no one telling me you need to do this or write this kind of music. But I sort of made a promise to myself that I would just keep this one little, whether 2 people hear it or 20 people hear it, or hopefully more, I'm gonna come out with this music that's my music. So
yeah,
I never really did that until, or I never thought of it in that way until, you know, if I had a trio gig, I'd throw a song of mine in, a tune,
Yeah.
and it'd have to be easy enough because that
Yeah.
somebody could
No
read and assimilate
rehearsal.
it. Yeah, no rehearsal.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky thing. Like if I have a group that I do every now and again, and I spend too much money rehearsing to make sure that, because I just want to, I'm like, if I'm going to do it, why don't I, you know, play
Do
my
it
own
well.
music or do my own
Yeah.
thing. Like there was a song that I wrote on that record, and it started, I was trying to learn uh Never My Love. So I'm like, oh, that's a cool song, Never My Love. And then I heard Kurt Elling do it. I'm like, oh, that's a nice tune. I should learn that. And I started trying to figure it out myself. And then I'm like, should I go and put on Apple Music or Spotify? And I said, you know what? Let me see what I come up with.
Yeah.
So I wrote my own tune instead. So I've
Uh-huh.
done that where someone has said, where I said, you know, instead of this song that I want to learn, I'll write my version, my tune of it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what's happened recently.
Yeah. It's interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, I've written, I don't know, maybe 60 songs or more. And every time I make a record, I try and put at least one on, and a few records have more than one. And live, um, I mean, you're in the mood for different music on different gigs.
Yeah.
Um, but um, yeah, I mean, recently I'm trying to do more originals.
Yeah.
Um, and like any artist, my originals go through phases. There's the folk phase, and then there's the
Yeah.
ECM phase, and then there's the bluesy phase, and so. But yeah, it's kind of always a question in my mind. What do I do with all these? What do I do with them? I mean, you can think of a
Well,
lot of different things.
yeah. I mean, for me, the things that I've always had sort of arrangements of standards.
Yeah,
And I had, this is my version. If I'm going to do, it ain't necessarily so. Everybody's heard it, but everyone has. But the beauty of jazz is that everyone's going to put their spin on it. So at least
yeah,
I'd have my own spin on it. It's going to go like this, and it's going to go like this. So that's been, and that is composing to a degree. I it's a fine line between some people take the arranging thing to the point where they're uh, they're rewriting the song so much that it takes you too far away from what the original, certainly original intent, but the original
body
progression
of
or body
yeah,
of what the
yeah,
song is. Like they're say, oh well, it's got parts of that, but it's not,
yeah,
but it doesn't really pay homage to the actual tune because it's so abstracted.
yeah,
So, uh, that I always wrestle with that, and but that is a form of composition to me, is like coming up with an arrangement that
yeah,
you put your spin on something, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
fun too, you
yeah,
know. And it also depends on like what band, if you have like your folk band or you have someone that does more of the ECM thing, you'll put those kind of things in, or you'll go, well, that could work that way. But I was always struck by reading about how Duke Ellington wrote for his orchestra. Like was it Bubba Miley, or he would write for that guy, and he'd
yeah,
write this concerto for this guy,
yeah,
or Cody Williams, because that's what they did. So he would think, how do I use what they do?
yeah,
So that's always, if you have the luxury of having the same guys, or
yeah,
certain guys, you go, oh, they'd be good for that, as opposed to making them, or sometimes taking them out of their comfort zone to play your thing. Sometimes that works too, it's hit
yeah,
or miss.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
It's very interesting.
yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. I
But
have I have a few really folky tunes because I mean, let's face it, that was part of my history, folk.
it
And
is.
so I have a few of those, and then I have I have a record with Larry Koontz. You probably know these guys, Larry
Yeah, yeah,
Koontz and
sure.
Josh Nelson.
Right.
You know him?
I know Larry Coons, sure.
Josh Nelson is one of the highlight piano players here.
Oh, right. Okay.
He's
Right
really
on.
a great writer, player, yeah,
Nice.
really beautiful. So he and Larry and I made a record called Dreamsville, and we did a few of my kind of more folky songs, and they just, well, the whole that's another thing. The relationship of the three of us was very specific and unique, you know,
Right.
and you know, it's I don't work like that with other people. I work in a different way, so
Yeah. And I
anything we
mean,
did was,
yeah.
beautiful. But they really took my folk songs and flushed them out. It was really beautiful.
Yeah. I, that's always really fun by and sort of working with specific people. And then like something happens where you
Yeah,
go, oh, let's just go that way and
yeah,
follow that. I love that. That's great.
yeah,
That's where the magic happens.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. I got to check that out for sure.
Taylor, I like this question, Taylor. How would you say you work on not being impatient with your creative process? Do you find that it's easy to have a starting line and finish any musical ambition in an optimal amount of time?
That's a great question. Well, I think there's certain, it depends. Like when sometimes it's great to have a deadline where you just go, you know how some songs have just sort of poured out of you. For
Yeah,
me, it's generally part of it will be, and then how much you're going to toil over getting to the next spot or figuring out what it is. And I get the idea of impatience because we want everything to just flow and happen now. And there was a song that is on my ended up being on this record that I was talking about. I was here, and the kernel of the song, the what do they call it? The motif, this little lick that I'd been playing since I was like 16, 17.
that's
So it
cool.
just became this thing that I would play, and it went nowhere. So it was like
Yeah,
a bridge that just dropped, a bridge to nowhere. And then and then we're in this we're in this apartment building. We lived downstairs a bunch of years ago. That's how I remember how it marked the time for me. But I started fleshing out another section. And then long story short, like 30 years later or something, I didn't finish it until I'm like, well, I should do that one. And I just, so I feel like I think it takes a lot of patience. And I think that if there's a lick or a phrase or something that's really in your DNA, it just keeps coming back. You keep dreaming about it or thinking about it, or if you've shelved it, it comes back. Some things you get lucky and it just happens, and you go, well, there it is. What am I going to do with it? It's nothing more I can say to it, and that's a different. I think that's obviously a different approach than like we need it a half an hour ago. Like
yeah,
just come up with, and there's something to be said for that because you don't have time to think, you don't have time to analyze anything. You just got to get it. We need, like, now they call it content, which is a scary word, but like could be anything. Throw it on the but there was, when I did the cartoon, there's an element of like we have a deadline and we have to
yeah,
just come up with something.
yeah.
It
I
might
like
not be our
that kind of.
best. Yeah, sometimes you get really lucky with that stuff because if so I think there's all sorts of ways to do it.
Yeah,
And but the songs that the pieces that some of them have lived with me for a while, and then I've practiced them to learn them. Like I've practiced them. Like you realize you wrote this tune. Some people say, "Oh man, your tunes are super hard," and I'm like, "No, are they?" But I've been practicing them for like 3 years, so they're not as hard to me. But for
yeah,
somebody to just look at them, and I just finished mixing this piece that I just put these things out as like little singles now, and it's an instrumental piece that I wrote over COVID with all this counterpoint and all this stuff, and it's like a puzzle,
mm,
figuring out a puzzle, like
yeah,
and not knowing or playing a game where you don't know how it's going to end or
yeah,
and it's really it's taken a long time to figure. And when I brought the demo to my friend Chris, who we help each other with all sorts of stuff, he started putting the tracks together. We did it piecemeal. I sent a vibes track to my friend. He put vibes on it. I sent the electric bass part. Will Lee did it for me when he was in France a while ago, and I had a percussionist down in Miami, this great guy, never met him before, the loveliest guy, and he put all this percussion stuff on, and it just sort of like blossomed. But it was like this journey.
Yeah.
So we finished it pretty much mixing it today,
Oh,
and it's kind of so. But I've lived with that piece for a very long time,
yeah.
and it was a puzzle putting it together. I've never written anything that difficult, but uh, hopefully it's not. There's a musical payoff to it. I think so. It's not.
Yeah.
I don't want it. I didn't want it to sound like a calculation.
Frankenstein or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Which you hear a lot of that stuff. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, I totally get it. I don't like to stop the muse, so I'd written a bunch of kind of short, simple things, and I didn't really know what was going on. Then I went to see a friend of mine who had written a suite, and I realized, oh, I could actually make those songs a suite.
yeah,
And that was an interesting idea for me. So and that way I'm really under no pressure to expand the songs into something more than they are. Um, but so I'm still on that journey. But yeah,
and I think
what
the
I
simple stuff is really the hardest to write. To write music that is super simple, but just gets right to
yeah,
the heart of what you want to express. I think that's sometimes way harder than all this other stuff for some
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
It's tricky.
I've been writing a lot of lyrics and
Oh,
uh,
cool.
yeah, and I've written for um, just because I wanted to, and then I've been fortunate enough to have the writers like it. Like Pat Metheny gave me
Awesome.
publishing on one song, and
Awesome.
do you know In Her Family
Is
from
it?
from the old an old Circle song? I think it was from his record back then, Circle
Oh,
Song.
wow.
Really beautiful song.
Yeah.
And ba-da-da-da, ba-ba-ba, ba-da-do-da-da-do-do. All his music is really musical,
It
but
lends itself to
yeah,
lyrics, those a lot of that music.
a Vince Mendoza song. He gave me publishing for that,
Wow.
and um,
Fantastic.
yeah, and but I my last project was a nonette, and we had picked a few Monk tunes and a Schofield tune, and I think I wrote the lyrics to those in a day, just because I had to, and
Yeah.
it just came out, and it was they were good, and it
Yeah. And you were having
remove
fun.
yeah, and you remove extra thinking because you have a quick deadline, you know,
Yeah.
so it's just like a clear pathway.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of some of the folks like, like Stevie Wonder, his output from like when he was, I don't know, when he started all those records like, you know, Music of My Mind, Talking Book, Filling This, First
Yeah,
Finale, Songs of the Key of Life. I mean, that's just a massive output, but he was just like,
I
and
know, right?
it just was, then it was like one day it was like, okay, I'm done. He came up with some cool stuff every now and again, but just, I don't, it was just pouring out. And when you think
I
of the
know, what a
Beatles,
body of music. Yeah,
the
that
Beatles were just getting up,
yeah.
just writing all sorts of stuff, and it just kept going and go.
And one of my all-time favorite albums is What's Going On. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was a complete
That's like a suite or
presentation.
something, isn't it?
It
Isn't
is,
that
isn't
like
it?
like
Yeah,
a
they he
what you were
doesn't like
saying?
do long, hard stops between songs.
No, they're just,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a great record. But because of that, like you were saying, you were stringing your songs together, you're just creating a vibe. You don't, the problem with, when the iPad and all that stuff came out and everything was chopped up into little pieces, and now, we have the attention span of a fly, and you got to get your word, you got to get it all in 3 minutes or less.
Yeah.
But those long running records where they would just let things just the jams, the rock records and the jazz where they just let things just ride out.
Yeah.
That
So beautiful.
that's yeah, that was, I feel like some of that got lost a little bit, or
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you can go and hear live music and get that
yeah,
experience, but
yes.
as we know, a lot of people don't. And they listen a lot online. And that jam thing, there's a place in Seattle. I forget the name of it, but what a great idea. So it's this place.
I'm going there
Um,
next week. I should check it out.
oh,
Yeah,
I
let me
have to
know.
send you the name of it.
Yeah.
So it's it's a it's a lounge, and so you go in, there's a bar, and then there's a separate room that's a listening room, and
Ooh.
you can't talk. I don't even know if you can drink in there. And they play classic records from all genres from the beginning to the end.
Ooh, that sounds cool
And
because
it's not
that sounds very
expensive either.
Japanese, like you
Yeah,
remember the record, the tea rooms or the bars where you would just go in and listen to sides and they had a
yeah.
million records.
I'm
Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
gotta check that out.
I'm writing it down to
Okay.
send you that information. I mean, I would love it if it wasn't there was one in LA, but there's not so
Just
far.
go
But
listen to
and it's
records.
cheap too. It's something like $20 or something.
That's re $20 is not a big deal these days.
Yeah.
They're
So
charging $900 for to go see a play in Broadway. It's like it's nuts.
when I was in New York, I went to see kids and nieces. Um, I really didn't like it. It was my nieces liked it,
What was
and
it
it's
called?
not Hell's Kitchen. It's
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
you
That's
know,
right. It's a big show.
and I don't I think her writing is pretty good, and the story was interesting, but how the music was arranged, there was absolutely no space in the music, in the orchestra, the arrangements. And I
Uh,
was just like, you've got to be kidding, man. It's like, what, you're just like plastering something out there. And this is no way to do it.
it, yeah, I feel like again, there's that need to. I mean, especially also in that world to just like more is more. Like we got
Yeah.
to hit him over the head and just
Yeah.
keep hitting him over the head and and yeah, I don't know what that's about. It's a different world, and I've always wrestled with that because it's the I used to play these. I used to work for a guy, and he would call me to play like cattle calls for Broadway,
Huh.
and it was like these guys would come in and they'd be like, and the under, they were super, and they needed a gig, so they were like, they give me their music, it was all screwed up, and like go there and go there, and they had, and you're reading, fly shit upside down, and and but they had this sort of look of terror in their eye. It was like, please like me, but it was always like the songs always had like a million lyrics, like you're like tripping over each other's lyrics, and I'm like, you know,
Yeah, it's way over the top.
yeah, it's this like we need more and more and more and more. There's that kind of thing where they feel like, we got to give them their money's worth, but there's, so
Yeah.
which is to me the antithesis of a vibe of, when if you went into a club and you were to hear, whomever, like just that had like incredible, it was just a vibe, like going into that place, which I'd love to find the name of it, and just listening to a record and
I,
just sinking
do you
yourself
know
into it.
Anthony Wilson, the guitarist?
No.
He plays he plays with Diana Krall, but
Oh,
his
okay.
his music is beautiful. I'm just thinking that you and he should play together because
Yeah.
you both have this combination of things, and you're playing like there's a groove and there's sophistication, and he's one of my favorite guitar players ever. He's
Is
really
is he a New York guy?
no, he lives in
Uh,
LA.
oh, okay, okay.
His father was Gerald Wilson, the big band
Right,
um,
okay.
guy, and he's just I can't say enough good stuff about him. And the last 15 years or so, he's gotten into writing and singing in almost a Robert Johnson style. And
Nice.
um, like each last time I saw him, he had violin, piano, and synth, bass, and drums, all very creative players. And each song was like a little movie. It was just beautiful. I mean, he's
Wow.
yeah, but I think if you ever get a chance
Oh,
to
I love
play with
that.
him, I think you should. Um, but
Uh,
I want to play something. Can we play um, something from I Was Here?
yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? That would be good. Um, I'll tell you, well, there's a bunch of different things we could play. Um, maybe what do you want to hear? The
I don't
if you want
know.
to really hear a real pretty song, I would say Luna or Snowfall. That's more lyrical. Um, it is what it is kind of a funky, it's got a lyrical melody, but it's kind of funky. And Green Woman is like a 12/8 type of jazz thing. That might be fun. You
Okay.
pick. Yeah, that's cool.
Let's
faster.
Nice. I love how you mixed.
What's that?
I love how you mixed that record.
Oh, well, I have to tell you, this was a real gift. I was lucky enough to get Elliot Shiner, who's like a genius, to track and mix the record, and that was an amazing experience. I've worked with Elliot through, like, met him through the Voices, and he's pretty much done everything. I mean, Steely Dan, and so it was he it was a little daunting, and I've known him. He's a friend of mine, and I've known him for years, and we've been talking about doing something, and this sort of was the right situation. But it was one of those things where his ears are so deep that when I went to go mix things with him, I'd have to really know why I want this part to be up and this part to be, like, what my sort of demands were, because he was like, you sure about that? Like, but it was a great experience. And yeah, I'm really proud. Everything that he tracks is amazing. So I was really, and this one I sort of spared no expense. I got all these great musicians to get together and do it. And it was really, at the end of the day, and they seem to be they dug the music, because we have always two situations where you get hired to do something, but I felt like they were all on the journey with me, which was really fun.
That's great. Yeah, I really liked it. I noticed the piano, because a lot of times the piano isn't present enough for me. I'm not one of those singers who likes to be way out of in front. Just don't
Yeah,
let.
what do they call that? Like the songwriter, the pop, the kind of,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, where they're really in front. Yeah, they're selling this. They sort of hit you over the head with that, and that seems to be a thing.
yeah.
Um, no, that was recorded at Bunker Studios in Brooklyn. It's a really nice studio, and they've done that piano is a Steinway C, which is a
Mm,
little shorter than a D,
yeah.
but it's from like the 1900s. But they did a lot of work to that piano because Brad Mehldau recorded a lot there, so they worked on that piano a lot, and I like it. It's
Huh,
beautiful.
that's
It's
great.
it's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, since
By
they
the
fixed
way,
it.
I just sent you the place in Seattle.
Oh, cool, cool.
I think you have to make a reservation. And you're right, it's
Shibuya Hi-Fi.
Japanese.
It's Japanese. That's so cool. I
Yeah.
love that. And I always loved going, like, you've been to Japan, we go in there and, like, you go to those little bars and there's like 8 people there, but it's a vibe. There's the whiskey's flowing and there's like a jazz group there and everybody's like
I
there.
know.
And I always love that. When I was there's a friend of mine who's a Japanese guy who's a guitar player, and I used to go and tour in the 90s with him. I met him he went to Berkeley. Guy, he's still there, Jiro Yoshida, and he does a lot of producing there and concerts, all that. And we used to go over there, and I'd put our keyboards, you put my keyboards, and we went over there with a guy who sang and played percussion, Philip Hamilton, who lives here in New York. And we would get in a van and drive to different, he would get these gigs in the weirdest place. Like we played Buddhist monasteries and
Yeah.
schools and coffee houses, and people are, you know,
Yep.
stuff in there, and they're looking, the kids are like looking from your feet up at the keyboard. And I love that whole, you know, it's very anti-COVID, isn't it? Where everybody's
Oh,
on
yeah.
top of you. But that there's something to that, those experiences. I mean, now it'd be great. I've never played in front of like 20,000 people. I'm sure that's a rush too, but there's something to be said about, you know, if you're playing to 10 people, but they're completely there, you know,
Yeah.
it's fun.
I've played a shitload of those because I've been going since 1980. And in the first 10 years, I went 3 times a year.
Oh
And
yeah, I used to go all the time. God bless the
yeah.
Japanese.
And my friend, he's kind of like a Keith Jarrett style player. He's lived there a long time. And the
Awesome.
booking person hooked us up together. So we literally went on the road in a car everywhere in Japan, and we had, you know, wild experiences. And
Totally.
yeah, there were a few times there that I've been in front of like an auditorium of, I don't know, 500 people or something. Eh, They're totally listening. And
Yeah,
it's
and it
just,
was,
it's
yeah,
beautiful.
they're
Yeah.
there, they're with
Yeah.
you, and then they don't make any sound till the end of the whole thing.
Oh,
It's
yeah. That's kind of,
wild.
yeah, that's unsettling at first until you get
Yeah,
it.
you got to get used to it, but they're great audiences. I mean,
Yeah.
and I haven't been over in a while, and I'm like, yeah, I used to go over all the time, and I've such, I didn't even, I didn't appreciate as much as I should have how respectful and how knowledgeable and just how passionate those people are, because they hide a lot of that, or it's very,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that that's hidden behind the protocol and the politeness and everything, but
Yeah.
they're very just totally down and passionate and open, and I'm ready to go back there. I might not come back if I go.
I like it. I'm going in May again.
Oh, are
I
you? Good.
Yeah, besides COVID, I've gone every year. And yeah,
I want to go.
last May I went for almost a month, and then I also went to Korea. But yeah,
That's
I have a
awesome.
lot of friends there, and I love teaching there. I love it. It's
Yeah,
it's really rewarding. And yeah, it's very
the whole
nice.
education thing there, and they just soak everything up.
Yeah,
It's really a beautiful culture. I feel like, no, we could learn a lot from them in so many ways, you know.
yeah.
And they've just adopted jazz and music and things Western. They just embraced it. It's pretty cool.
Well, their point of view of art is very beautiful, very old, and like my favorite people there are usually artists and farmers, you know, because they're connected to, you know, real quality something.
Oh, yeah,
It's
we
really good.
went. I remember I was mentioned we would go when we were in this van. We go to these places out in like the middle of like a rice field. They
Yeah,
were really
yeah.
rural areas, and the people seemed like that, very connected. They were just very peaceful, and so we did play in this a couple times in this Buddhist monastery, and it was deep. Where we were
Yeah.
sort of, they had those metal bowls, or what, those bowls that they'd ring,
Oh, yeah.
and we would, it'd be a tone, and we would just improvise free over it, and they were totally into it, and they were the monks were so cool. I mean, they
Yeah.
were like they were just like the coolest people. You just wanted to hang out with them, and it was, yeah. I'm ready to go back. Shoot, man. You need a roadie in May?
Yeah, maybe.
I've
You
been
never
back
know,
there.
man.
Yeah, it's
Um,
great.
let's see. Taylor's been writing a few questions, so let
Oh,
me let
thank you,
me look
Taylor.
look at them because he he did a show or he did an interview thing when he was at North Texas. So he talked to a lot of people. He talks to a lot of people. He's like mentioning Julian Lage and Brad
Oh,
Melman.
yeah. Yeah. He's great.
So what is this about Brad? He said, um, yes. He said Brad and he had a conversation recently about oftentimes in the position of where the things you approach at the piano are not always taken in a perfectionist way, but letting the flow of not being self critical in your reactions makes the flow of the process more organic.
Yeah. Say that again. I just want to soak that in.
Yeah. Oftentimes in the position of where the things you approach at the piano are not always taken in a perfectionist way, but letting the flow of not being self critical in your reactions makes the flow of the process more organic.
Yeah, very much so. There were a couple of times when um, there was a guy that used to, I lived on Haviland Street, like I was telling you, just
Yeah,
off of, what is that, Mass Avenue.
yeah,
And there was a guy named Brian Walkley. I'm not sure if he's still with us. He was a really interesting guy, but he booked all the music. He was a big jazz guy. He played piano, but he did everything, but he would play all these solo gigs and book all that stuff all over town. He was like a real cat. He was a funny guy. Real it was like an old jazz cat. He had an old soul. And he would have Kenny Werner come. This is back, late 90s. You'd have, and he said, Uncle Kenny's coming, and he would stay at his place. And I took a couple lessons with Kenny, and it was a lot about that sort of
yeah,
effortless
yeah,
mastery and that just letting your fingers fall onto the keys and seeing what happens and taking it from there. So it sounds a little bit like that,
yeah,
where the process of being on your way to trying to perfect something leads you to, or just the feeling of openness and the being in the present with it. I think that's a big a big part, a big factor in. I always say the best I can play is by not getting in my own way and not being there, not
yeah.
being like my
Control.
mind control.
Yeah, yeah,
You need your mind to go, okay, we're going to go play this section
yeah,
next, or you need it for that stuff. And I would say that the same thing in everyday life, but in terms of letting things happen, I think that's a very it's a difficult thing to do sometimes. Or even
yeah,
writing, we talk about writing something and leaving space in the writing for something to happen. Like structuring it just enough, whether it's a groove or a vamp or something, that it's still your thing, but trusting in that whoever's playing it is going to take it somewhere. That's why a lot of times we talk about those records that just keep going on. That's like a groove, or it gets into a thing like that last chord of the of Green Woman. It's just this this chord, and it's this. Let's take this to another place here. This goes to this this sound. Let's take it somewhere else, and then people. But to be able to trust that someone is going to just be in the moment, be present with that, and just interact and react to it. That to me is where the magic happens.
yeah. And I like the concept of curiosity.
Yeah,
Curiosity is creativity. So you play something and you, it doesn't have to be this huge dramatic curiosity. It's just, oh, what's that? Where can that go? And in the
yeah,
space you can find that out. Yeah. I
yeah,
remind myself about being curious and not, you know, who is it? There was some famous pianist, I think, who was talking about it was on Instagram I saw. Anyway, he was saying his point of view was try and make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, how
Just
many
get
times have you
in the
stumbled?
lane.
Yeah, how many times I like to call them happy accidents. How many
Yeah,
times have you stumbled on something and going, "Oh, what was that? That I didn't
yeah.
mean to do that, but oh wait, that was kind of cool." But yeah, the curiosity, the discovery. I find that um like people like I really find that people's playing like the sort of Sullivan Fortners, those kind of guys where he's just like constantly just finding things out as he's going.
Yeah,
And I always felt that, that's amazing to be in that space and having that sense of openness and what he's discovered from all that. And I always felt like when I would go see a few times I'd see, Herbie Hancock playing like
yeah,
trio
yeah,
and I just always felt like you were on this journey
yeah,
and you didn't know where he was going and he didn't know where he was going, but there was so much trust in it
yeah.
that it didn't really matter. Didn't matter which cliff he dove off of. And I remember once seeing him there, and then I got to meet him upstairs at the Blue Note in New York. And I said, I got a question for you because they were playing all this over the bar line stuff and there were vamps and all this stuff. I said, do you ever get lost? And he goes, oh, yeah, all the time. And I was like, really? Like because I couldn't, he goes, yeah, but then you find your way back or like, but to hear him say that, yeah, all the time, I'm like, oh, okay, now I don't feel so bad, but I was lost half the time. It's great. But that's that uh what Taylor was saying, like that, or what Brad was saying, just to be in that space, to be able to let yourself find something on your way to something.
Yeah,
I feel like that's where it happens.
yeah.
When you're what is the, what's that line of John Lennon's life is what happens when you're busy making plans or something like that.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, something like that. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I feel
Um,
like part of Brad's Meldau's, he's brilliant. He
yeah,
has all this stuff, but how he puts it together and how he just thinks of things is just that to me is where where the sort of brilliance comes alive, because he's got all the tools are there,
yeah.
for those types of masters.
Do you teach as well?
I don't. I taught a little bit here and there.
You
And
should teach, and I'll tell you why. Because just talking to you, I feel like going to the piano and working on
oh,
music.
good. Yeah. No, I feel like well, everyone got into the teaching thing.
Yeah,
I always was like, oh, well, I should just be playing gigs because, who am I to tell somebody what to do? But, after a while, you do have these, like, you sort of just have these pearls of wisdom from us, banging our head against the wall so many
yeah,
times. You know,
yeah,
yeah, I'd love to. Part of me thinks, oh, I'd love to teach somebody that doesn't know anything, only because they're wide open.
yeah.
But that can be tricky because then they don't have any tools yet. So,
Right.
but I would cover for a friend of mine. A couple times I covered for my friend Jeff Keyser when he was teaching. He teaches at Juilliard, but he was teaching at William Patterson,
Hmm.
like, yeah, last year, and I went out there a couple times, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I'm like, what am I going to, like, walk in there going, the hell am I going to tell these kids? And then you're like, oh, how about this? And then they were all really great students and they all had really interesting things. They were at different levels. There was one kid that was just like, you could tell he was just on his way. Like, let's just play because you've got a lot of that stuff together. And but I'd like to get into it because I feel like I have a friend who, especially over COVID, he's an actor and he's really a director. He acts, he does stuff on television and movies and stuff, but he he's a director, but he's a good musician. He's a good pianist. So he's always calling me and we'll get together and how do I do this? And I actually, we got together and we did like Zoom calls like this. And he said, man, you really changed how I
Mm,
approach this. And it was very fulfilling to know that. Like I didn't think anything of it, but
yeah.
that's really, he said, man, my whole concept changed when you gave me these couple of exercises. And I'm like, cool. So yeah, it's not something I always felt like, you always feel like, those who can't do teach. But I think I kind of, because I've had such good training, I felt that I didn't want to be the guy that just teaches it's great to make a few extra bucks on the side, but I didn't want to do it
Just for
just
that.
just for the sake of
Yeah.
like, I didn't want to half-ass it because I've had such good training.
Yeah.
I feel like, between Oberlin and I've had such good teachers
Yeah.
that I didn't want to sort of abuse that privilege in a way.
I think it's speaking about teaching, I've taught for years, but I've learned what I like, how I like to teach, and how I don't like to teach. I
Mm.
don't enjoy being forced into a university thing where it's an elective and they don't care. They're just kind of, you know, I don't like
They got to
following
get the
the red tape.
credit. They got to
Yeah,
get the credit.
and the red
Yeah.
tape, I'm really not good at the red tape.
Yeah.
And I even changed my website a few years ago to reflect who I am more spiritually because I am a very spiritually inclined person, and I'm not going to teach you great if you want to be like a pop star. It's just not what I do. But what I do like to do is I like to get first of all, well, I like to get into the person's mind and perspective. And the people who are inclined towards what they're doing um, as a really desirable path. You can say spiritually, but they don't have to think of it like that. But they're connected, to that desire to learn and to move on. Those kind of people I can help very well. And
Yeah.
it's not, it's definitely not do it my way or no way. It's let me get into your head. Let me see how you learn, and let me see if I can help you look at something, how you learn that will be a light bulb.
Right,
So,
right, right. I
yeah,
mean, I feel like when I was teaching those five kids at the university, they all came in with different expectations. They all came in with completely different backgrounds. One guy
yeah,
was from South America, so he had a different thing. And everybody, it would have been a mistake to treat everyone like, if you're teaching a theory or
yeah,
cycle of fifths, that is what it is.
yeah,
So there's that. And some people are really good at that. Um, I Some people are just really good at like, this is the method for this, or
yeah,
I feel it. But there's the conceptual thing, like, what is this? And the first thing I would do is ask them, what do you want to get? What do you want to, master or get good at? Or what do you want to be? What is the
yeah,
thing that, and some people don't know, but when I came here to New York first, I was just like, oh, I got to do everything. And I thought, every singer is gonna sing like this and be like, Sarah Vaughan, and every piano player is gonna have to be, like what you name it, Bill Evans. But it doesn't work like that. Like, everyone has their own thing, and they're all coming from, like you said, your folk experience. You're going to bring that with you. That's a part of you. That's in
yeah,
your DNA. So
yeah.
that's part of what you want to get better at. And I think it takes a while to sort of figure all that stuff out. Do you ever, when you have a project or something, and you say, well, I have to learn this music. I got to know what this is. Do you ever start thinking, for this project, how am I going to approach it differently than any other thing? Because how should I what should I lean into? Should it be more, am I listening more? Am I listening to the music more? Or am I, how do I want to approach it? What angle? We have all these tools, you know. I could write out a Sibelius chart. I could do this. I could put it, play it, and you know, learn the piece and blow over it or whatever. But I feel like with good teachers, they've always had that idea of like each approach is for each different person, you know, like so I think that would, I guess if I taught more, I would, that would be my idea. Like how, what are you into? I used to have a student when I lived downtown, and he would come to me, and he was already studying. I think he was studying with like Jim McNeely, and he was at, or
Hmm.
he was it at NYU, or he was, and I was just showing him. I said, this is what we should work on. We should work on arrangements. You want to learn how to play an arrangement or how to create an arrangement out of a tune. You've got this 32 bar tune or song form or whatever it is, and standard or whatever. How, what are you going to do with it, and how you're going to approach it stylistically? What do you know, what's your intro going to be? And for him, I felt like because he was learning all this other stuff in school, he was learning arranging, he was, you know, doing all this other stuff. I thought it would complement what that was. And so I think that's the fun part of teaching, is figuring out, you know, what each student needs. And you know, it's, and I, you know, I probably, as a teacher, you probably take a lot from your student. You probably learn things that they'll bring something in and you'll be like, wow, I never heard that before. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it is fun. That's an interesting question of, regarding like which, different
The approach.
projects. Yeah, and
Yeah.
um, I think that at this point in my life, I've been singing since I was born, so I've gone through a lot of different states of mind. And of course now being 71, I'm much more relaxed about my points of view, you know. It's like
Yeah.
and um ev things that I decide to work on are for my personal health, and expansion. So at this point, I mean, there are definitely songs like that No Net project. I had to really study the songs. A few of the songs were quite um, hard, like
Yeah.
Otmaro Ruiz song that I was totally in love with. I wrote lyrics for him and it was gorgeous, but I really had to do my homework learning the music and then over and over again, and but I think what I want to do um, is, like you said, uh, playing over it and playing with it enough that it becomes a free expression of yourself through the song. Of course, like for people like us, when we play a standard that we know, we can do a lot. I mean, if you and I sat
Right.
down and did a standard, we could do a lot
Yeah.
of,
Go anywhere.
yeah, rhythm and,
Yeah.
harmonies and all kinds of stuff. The other songs that are more songs, I have kind of this love-hate thing with being a singer and not just an instrumentalist because I feel like I have to be really committed to this like form of the song. So a lot of times, I have to kind of fight with myself to, be uh, allow myself to be free, but not too free. Or, I don't want to. I want the audience to
Yeah.
get
Right.
the
You know,
song.
I get into a thing with, maybe because of my like sort of semi-classical background, I get into a thing and I've written pieces that are, they're like pieces. So roughly I can change, you know, we want to change little things here and there, but
Yeah,
essentially I have to learn my pieces if it was even written out. Sometimes I've written it out, you know,
yeah,
or it, but I've gotten to the point where like it goes like this, and you're playing a piece as if you were playing someone's sheet music, playing a
yeah,
piece. And then I have to say, well, and I have a piece that I wrote recently, a solo piece, and uh, it took me the longest time. I was playing it at this tempo, and it had this little motif, and it kept going and going, and I and I learned it. So there's little inner movements and little things that I just do
Yeah.
because I've sort of taught my fingers to do them. But then I feel like it's hard for me now to change up. That has become part of the piece. There's parts where there's like you're kind of improvising on it. So the
Yeah.
improvised section, I'm playing a little too straight for me. And now I realize, well, it's solo piano. If it's a solo piano thing and I'm not playing, I don't I can change the rhythm or I can tamper the rhythm down. I was working with somebody and I'm playing this for this friend of mine who's a singer, and she said, "Why don't you just play it like um, or like rubato, just really chill?" And I'm like, I said, well, it doesn't really go like that because in my mind it has these motor rhythms that keeps going. But now she was right. I'm like, I don't have to do that. I can. So it's like you evolve. But the thing that's tricky for me is that I feel like I need to come at a piece more on some things happen like that, but come at as an improvisation as
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, I wrote this piece and it's got to be like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And it's good to have that structure. But for me, when I'm just playing the piece, I'm playing it like a piece that I like a classical piece. And I'm like, well, how would I play this if I just had a chart and I was just kind of winging it? So I feel like for myself, I have to force myself to, I guess, not deconstruct it, but to find different ways to play the same thing. Because, you can play a good tune, like you're saying, we could play, if the standard's a great piece and we know how it goes and we know the tune, you can go anywhere with it. If you
Yeah.
really know it backwards and forwards,
Yeah.
you can be totally free with it. I once saw when I was in University of Miami, John Schofield came and they played All the Things You Are. And he said, this piece for me, I don't know a zillion tunes, but this one I know a zillion, like I could play it upside down, underwater. And there's a few songs probably that are in your DNA that you know so well that it's just like you could start from anywhere, you can play, you know. So I'd love to try to get to that point with some of my tunes because I think, all right, well, you play a gig and you play like, do we? It's I can play All Things You Are and bring something to it, and I played it a zillion times, but people know that song. They don't know your song or my song as much, but how do I make that into something? Like why not write your own tune that's like that or something like that,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I exactly the same thing. I do that, and being the songwriter, I have that old kind of songwriter thing that it's like I want you to know the song I wrote. I don't, because if I'm going to sing it like the improviser, you're not really going to hear the exact song I wrote.
Yeah.
And I don't like that point of view, but I find, well, but then there is the other side of that, which is if I sing the real melody of a song and you
Hmm.
are playing beautiful stuff behind it, why should I even change the melody? It's gorgeous, It's
Yeah.
the relationship of the melody and the harmony is perfect. Why do I have to change it? I don't have to. So there's that
Yeah.
part of it, as opposed to what we were just talking about, improvising. I had that experience. Like I recorded Save Your Love for Me, and I recorded it kind of funky. And so I did it the other day because I want to sing it in an upcoming show. And the first time around, I was so bored with myself because I was singing it, basically how it's written, even though it's kind of funky. And then I just, said, okay, I'm just going to do me, and then it
Yeah.
was great because I do me much better than I,
You know how
sing
to yeah, you know
exactly.
how to do it at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
funny. I was thinking we were talking about especially All Things You Are. I used to have this brunch gig with this friend of mine. It was upstairs where the old Iridium was in New York.
yeah,
This place called Merlot. It was like a jazz brunch gig. It was, and I would oftentimes play All Things You Are, you know, and I put it in three, four, because it kind of swung in that way. And I'd do the 4/3 for the melody and different things and swing it. And but at the time I was listening to all this, like the Jarrett stuff and all the abstractions of how people abstract these standards. And Percy Heath came in and he said, "Man, you sound great. What was the name of that tune that you were playing?" And he didn't even know. And I was like, "Well, I was hoping you'd,
Wow.
and it was the progression of All the Things You Are." But I'm like, and my friend to this day,
Cool.
Paul, he just makes fun of it. He goes, "Yeah, what was the name of that tune again?" Because it was so like I must have been playing like over the bar line weird shit on
Wow.
it,
I love
but
that.
yeah, isn't that funny? But
Yeah.
I mean, when you listen to those Miles things, he was so inside that it became something else, and he knew how it went. When you see the trajectory of all his older recordings, how he played those like a singer would sing, like how he played those standards,
Yeah.
and then after a while, when he got, especially the more like with, Herbie Hancock and Tony Williams and Ron
Yeah.
Carter and those guys, the way they abstracted those, especially with Wayne Shorter and all those, the way they abstracted those songs,
Yeah.
it just became something else. And I love when that happens. And I think a good tune or good melody or good structure will lend itself, it won't break, it will lend itself to doing all sorts of wild things to it. And uh that's where I think the fun comes in. And that's where, when you're working, like you're saying, you work with your musician friends, and they'll take it and they go, "Oh, I didn't know you brought something totally different to that." That's the thing that's the exciting thing to me
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. By the way, if you're interested to experiment, I do Star Eyes and Pensativa in three. They
Oh
work really good.
wow.
It's beautiful.
Pensativa, that's a wild, yeah.
I'll send you a
Please,
recording.
I'd love to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, certain things. What have I put in three? I do a very up. I don't. I'll have to send you the recording because it never really. I did a version of just one of those things, super
Oh,
upbeat in three. Just
huh.
and
That's
it's like,
nice.
yeah, and it's, yeah, I recorded it with
That's nice.
David Fink and who's great drummer. Oh my God, I'll think of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah, I don't know why it just felt right in
That's
three
good
sometimes.
because that melody is a very solid melody. And
Yeah,
so that tempo is
and he has
fun
those long
for
melodies,
that. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
sustained melodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh yeah, yeah, I'd love to hear that stuff. That's cool. But
Star
I've been,
Eyes is
yeah,
especially beautiful. I really wanted to do Star Eyes, but I couldn't get the Carmen McRae version out of my head, which was kind of Latin.
right.
And I love 3/4. So I tried it out and it was like, wow, this is perfect in 3/4. Star Eyes. It's really beautiful. So and then Pensativa came up actually on that Dreamsville record with Larry and Josh. Um, yeah, we did that and it was yeah, just beautiful. Well, that record was special anyway, but
Nice.
Pensativa, just beautiful, like 3/4.
That's a great tune.
Yeah.
I think there was a tune that I've been thinking of doing, Young at Heart, but and now I preface this by saying I was thinking doing it in five,
Oh, oh, nice.
but it would
Yeah.
have to have something to it. I was, you know, I was talking with this my friend today, and because we were doing this mix, and I said I have this new rule that I make for myself because this, all this complicated music, like especially a
Yeah.
lot of drummers, they want to write in 11/8 and all this crazy stuff and some people really, I'm not one of them. Some people can really pull off that kind of those um, different odd meters and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like, I feel like finally I can play pretty well in seven. Okay. I've gotten better over the years, but to be able to really feel like that, make it feel good. And
Yeah.
so my rule of thumb for me is if I stumble onto something writing and it feels good and I go, what's that? Like I have a piece that I'm actually writing. I gave it for lyrics to Lauren Kinnan, but it has a lot of 7 and 6, and there's a couple little skippy things, but I've gone through it a million times. But the first, so it goes into 5 and 6. The main groove is in 11, but it feels
Comfortable.
but it has a thing, and I'm still like trying to, but if it doesn't feel right, I don't want to do it, because I never understood that. Sometimes I used to read this music of these guys, and I just didn't understand. There were a lot of times it wasn't a music payoff for me. Like it didn't, I couldn't feel it, or I couldn't, maybe I wasn't as good at doing it, but it would have to feel like something. And obviously, if you're playing an 11, but it stays in 11, you're not doing 11 and then 9 and then like.
I agree with you.
I don't
And
really dig that. I can't
know.
get into it.
I agree with you. And I mean, some of the coolest songs that I've written have a weird form, you know, but it's okay because that's where it starts. It starts
It's got to
with the
feel
song.
right, but it feels right to you. Exactly. If
Yeah.
it feels right to you. And
Yeah.
I think it's always better to go, oh, what is that? Like coming up with some kind of rhythmic thing. I feel like, I think there's a emphasis now with like young folks to write all this really tricky stuff. And sometimes it's really amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive that they can do that.
Yeah.
But the why is the most important thing. Like, what's the payout? Can I sit back? Can I sit back without a calculator and just close my eyes and
enjoy it?
dig it? Yeah. So I think that, yeah. So that's important.
I want to show the people again you're playing,
Oh,
and
thanks.
I'm wondering if I can find you again on YouTube, um, and something possibly live. Whoops.
What do I have?
What did I just do? Okay, let's see. Whoops, no, I did not mean to do that. Okay. Let's see. Here's at the Pilgrim.
That's a gig we did in Belo Horizonte. I'm trying to think.
And there's another song from there. This one.
That's on Green Dolphin Street. That was in Brazil. We did this with this great bass player, Anais. That was fun. Let me see where these are.
It's only 1 year ago. And then for new music. Oops, something's playing. Did I hit something?
Yeah, something.
Oh, this is
this was these Japanese. Yeah, this is. I made these records in Japan for a Japanese label a million years ago. I'll tell you what this is. Yeah.
It almost sounds like That's All.
So you know what this is? I did these records for this Japanese label, and it was literally music by the pound. And they said, I want to use your name, but they spelled it wrong, you'll notice. They said AZRIN, which is wild. Right. But they said, but they made it, there were 50 songs, and we had to do it. Talk about just like, I didn't know these pieces. So this is an interesting thing. Within a day and a half, like, 6 hours one day and then 3 hours the next day, we're just, okay, what's this song?
Hi, Mark Barden at Sandy Hook Promise.
Yeah.
And what's this song? What's the form? and the bass player, I'm trying to think, his name was Naoki, wasn't Mitsura. There was a bass player. He lives in back in Japan, Japanese fellow, and he did all the arrangements. His name's probably in there, but it's in katakana. So so it was like, okay, what's so this is so Japanese. These were pop songs that were pop melodies, well known in Japan, but so this was written by Keisuke Kuwata, who I'd never heard of, but they said, okay, so this is the piece, and you're just reading it down, roll tape. So, and it's an interesting, we were talking about like not having enough time to think about anything. You were just getting this whole thing. And I actually swore up and down I would never do this again, but it was just like, oh, I needed the bread. Oh, let's do it, Yeah. But a lot of people listen to stuff now and they go, this is really good. And I go, oh yeah, that's right. I remember doing that, but I barely don't remember doing it because it just all happened so fast. But there was no time to think. You just played.
Yeah.
So that's what that is. It's interesting that you picked. I need to have more things on YouTube. I'm about to dump a bunch of new things on
and
there, but
it had certain progressions from That's All, actually. But
totally, yeah, sure. It was.
Should I listen to one of these, like in Brazil?
Yeah, sure. This is just a live gig in Brazil. Yeah, sure.
Nice, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Wow.
I haven't heard
Cool.
I haven't heard that in a long time. That was in Belo Horizonte in Brazil. That the bass player, he's fantastic. Anais Xavier, he asked us to play. We had a night off. We were playing down there with Madeline Peru. We had a night off, so we just did this gig. And the beautiful thing about it is that's where Toninho Horta lives. So
Oh.
he came and
Oh.
he came and hung this gig and played a couple. We played a couple of his tunes
Oh,
because
wow.
Anais is really friendly with him, and he came to our gig, and his music is really
Yeah.
beautiful stuff,
Gorgeous.
just
I
gorgeous
know.
stuff. So that was a real treat, real treat.
So, so the guitarist and drummer are from the
The drummer
States?
is the Graham is the drummer. He lives up the street from me in Harlem, Graham
Oh,
Hawthorne, and we play with Madeline. He's a great drummer, and he has a studio up here, and he lives up on 127th Street in Harlem. And the guitarist, I don't know, that was a friend of Anais, so he just sat in.
slamming.
Really fun. He was there. There's some really
Wow.
great musicians down there, and
Yeah.
then I don't know. I don't think he could have the pieces, the stuff we did with Tonino. I don't think because Anaya split them up and put them on YouTube, but I'm not sure he was able to do that if he had permission from Tonino. But that was special playing his music with him, and I've always been a fan of his. And
Absolutely. He's great. But that
it's very
guitar
different.
player was really great.
I know, and he was just like these guys,
I know.
They say in Brazil,
They
you're either
grow.
you're born with a guitar in one hand and a soccer ball in the other hand or something like that, right? No, they were incredible. They were amazing. Yeah, and that was
Absolutely
just
great. Yeah.
first time I ever played with that guy. It was great. Yeah, that's the beauty of, this stuff. It's really fun.
Well, believe it or not, it's been 2 hours.
Oh my God, flying by.
I know.
This has been a
People always
pleasure.
say, "What? This has been
Really?
2 hours?"
I know. You get into
Um,
it. Great.
anyway, it's been really fun to talk with you,
Absolutely.
get to know
Likewise.
you. Yeah.
Likewise, Kathy. What
And
a pleasure.
I hope
Thank
that
you.
we can continue. I'm going to send you a few things to listen to. Also, I think I might
Please
just
do.
introduce you and Anthony Wilson together. Just
I would love
if you're
that.
in the
I would love
same
that.
city by chance, I think you guys would really like to play with each
I
other.
would
So
love that. Yeah, and we should get together at some point if I'm up. A
I'd
lot of
love
times I get over there
you do?
if yeah, look, certain times it brings me, certain
Yeah.
gigs or something brings me over there. I'd love
Oh
to.
gosh, please let me know. That would be
Absolutely.
so
Yeah, I
cool.
would
I
love
mean,
that. That'd be
yeah,
fun.
yeah, it'd be great.
That's right. I remember you said, yeah, that's right. You were out there. Um, yeah, it's a lot of great musicians out there. Oh my God, this is pretty nutty. And the weather's not as bad as here.
Especially today.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's crazy. I was like, so I decided I'm going to take this little scooter. I get around, I go to the park but it said light rain, but it became just rain. So I was like, okay, not doing that again, you
Well,
know.
in Michigan, I just talked to my friend in Michigan this morning. It's
Hey,
29 degrees.
what? Really?
She said it's
Still that cold?
beautiful, but it's still, yeah,
Cold up there. Gets cold.
yeah,
It's up there. Gets
yeah,
cold up there.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Thank God.
All right. Well,
Anyway.
thank you so much. And
Kathy, I'm glad
just
we
been a
made this
pleasure.
happen.
Yeah.
Likewise. Let's stay in touch, please. I
Okay.
love that.
Thank you so much. And just a quick PR about what's going on. So, for those of you in LA, I am at Jinkies in Santa Monica, 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Ooh,
every Saturday. So tomorrow, I'll be there with Dory Amarillo and
I hope they have
Jody De
coffee
Leon.
there.
Oh, they have good breakfast too, and it's right near the beach. You can see the beach.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and then Monday, I'm interviewing Ken Poplawski.
Sure. That's
So that'll
great.
be fun. So that's it for this brief moment in time. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. What a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
You too. Yeah, right. Exactly. Afternoon for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. Take care.
Bye. Bye, fellow Newtonite.
Yeah, exactly. Newtonians.